So in this video we are going to discuss about the transaction control, transaction concept, transaction state, concurrent execution, serializability and testing for conflict and view serializability, recoverability, cascading rollback, cascade list can be discussed in this video. So comes to the transaction, it is a unit of program which executes and access possibly updates wherever the data items. So for example, so we are transferring the amount of 50 from account A to account B. So what is the code behind working behind this is read A and A is assigned to A minus 50 and write A, read B. B is assigned to 50 plus 50 and write B. The two main issues to deal with is failure of various kinds such as hardware failures and system crashes, and concurrent execution of multiple transactions can be executed over here. So the transactions to transfer 50 from account A to B is as follows. So this atomicity requirement is the failure steps after 3 and before step 6 money will be lost, leading to the inconsistent database state. So failure could be due to the software or hardware. So durability requirement, once the user has been notified that the transaction has completed, the updates to the database by the transaction must persist even if there are some hardware software failures. So in this example, the fund transfer, the consistency requirement is for sum of A and B is unchanged by the execution of the transaction, and the implicit integrity constraints, the transaction must see a consistent database, and during the transaction execution the database may be temporarily inconsistent. When the transaction completes successfully, the database must be consistent. So example for fund transfer is here after the transaction isolation, the transaction T2 will be waited so until the T1 process completed, and the read and write process will be executed parallelly. So this is how the transaction control will be properties. So comes to the asset property. So the transaction is a unit of program execution which accesses the isolation, atomicity, consistency and durability. So in this state, so we have active, partially committed, failed, aborted and committed states are there. So based on this, the execution of program will be committed. So in this state, the transaction concurrent execution may be increased process under disk utilization, and reduced average response time may be utilized. What are the schedules we can able to perform is the schedule is sequence of instructions that specify the chronological order in which the instructions can be carried out over there. So the example for this is the schedule 1. So the transaction T1 will be executed until the T2 start, and here the T2 will be executed first and until the T1 start. So the similar process in the transaction T1 and T2, the schedule 3. So after the read and write process of T1, the read and write process of T2 will be executed, and vice versa it will be executed. So the process that following concurrent schedule is does not preserve the value of A and B here. So comes to the serializability. So the conflict serializability and view serializability are the two categorization. Conflict means conflict equipments and conflict serializable functions which we can be accessed over there. So this is the same example what we discussed for transaction control and serializability. So this will be uplifted, and the view after transactions can be read and write. So the based on the our simplified schedule consists of only read and write transactions. So this can be performed by the queries as follows. So read, write and write process the instructions of Ti and Tj respectively. So conflict if any we have. So and view serializability. So view serializability is the following three conditions are met for each other. The conditions can be carried out over the transactions. So the executions are as follows. So the testing of serializability is based on between the transaction T1 and T2. So the procedural graph can be drawn over there. So the test of conflict, the test procedures are as follows, which we can be executed in the amount of duration. So recoverable schedule, so which we can adapt it to the recoverable schedule, so that previously written by the transaction T1, and if the transaction Tj reads. So this appears before the commit operation of Tj. The following schedule can be executed. So this is a cascading rollback operations. So it is a single transaction failure leads to a series of transaction rollbacks. Consider the following schedule where none of the transaction is yet to be completed. So this is cascading schedule is also recoverable and it is desirable to restrict the schedule to those that are cascades. Thank you.